You're listening to 17 Carat K-Pop, the show that's a little bit of everything with a K-pop twist. Visit 17caratkpop.weebly.com for more information about the show. That's 17caratkpop.weebly.com. Enjoy the show! Hello everybody, and welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop. I am so excited that Never Gonna Dance Again Part 2, Act 2, is finally out from Taemin. His new album is really so wonderful, and I have a lot to say about it, a lot of thoughts and theories, and a brand new all-encompassing theory about Taemin's character in his music video universe and what his whole message is. A brand new theory I did not discuss on my previous Taemin dedicated episode. I have a lot of new content to discuss and new symbols that have resurfaced in my head as suddenly a lot more important in Taemin's storyline, so this will not just be a repeat of the past Taemin episode. There's a lot of new stuff I have to address, lots of thoughts and theories, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. This whole thing starts with, actually last time I said it started with Danger, but actually I guess you could walk it back further to the concept trailer for his first EP, Ace. And in this Ace concept trailer, he is in this parking garage setting that he ended up going back to later for the Danger video, and there's this motorcycle scene in the corner that he rides off on after this major scene to remember. So if you don't remember the motorcycle, fine, but please remember that before he rode off on it, there was this scene where there is a room full of microphones hanging from the ceiling. So all these long black cables are dangling from the ceiling with mics face down toward the ground in this room that is all white. It's just this empty room, except it has microphones from the ceiling. The other key detail to remember from the concept trailer from the very beginning of this story is that he was wearing a white turtleneck. Just trust me, that's key here. Also, it's worth noting that there's this scene where he is dancing on a stage in some sort of theater of sorts, but no one is in the seats, so it's an empty auditorium. The Press Your Number video we talked about quite a bit before, but what we didn't touch on is some of the close-up detailing that is worth noting. There is a close-up at the very beginning of the Press Your Number video that shows two of Taemin. So two Taemin faces, one facing to the right, cast in red light, and one facing to the left, cast in green light. Then we see other key images lit up in red or green, which seems intentional, the difference is there. In the red lighting, we see this one scene where there is a Taemin within a Taemin, basically, where Taemin is basically his close-up faces forming the background of an image of Taemin within the other image. And that image within the image is him in the fancy hotel room. So Taemin is basically making a phone call, and then during that split second of the video, while he's making the phone call, you could zoom in and see at the center of the screen is a smaller image of a Taemin who is in a different location. He's in that fancy hotel room setting with the chandelier and the full-length mirror front and center of it. There's one point then where there's that whole car crash scene, and the car emits green smoke at the start of the robbery scene, and then after the crash, it emits blue smoke afterwards, followed by Taemin being seen with blue flowers. So green smoke, then suddenly the crash happens, Taemin looks bloodied up from it. The blue smoke and blue flower then come up in the story. There are some more blink and you'll miss it moments that are key, where Taemin keeps switching places with his victims. So, he tries to go rob this convenience store, and while suddenly he is seeing himself as the cashier instead of the girl who was the cashier before he suddenly saw himself literally in her, basically. So he suddenly realizes he's robbing himself. There's another moment where you see someone is duct taped with their hands tied under a piano in that fancy hotel room, and it looks like it's the girl victim, but it turns out to be Taemin, and it goes back and forth like that. There's another moment where Taemin is seen in the getaway car as both the driver and the duct tape person in the back of the car. So he is his own victim here. In between the action-packed scenes of this whole robbery and high-speed chase and everything, in between those action-packed scenes of this video, there are scenes where Taemin is in this deserted area off the road, standing on the hood of that broken-down car sometimes, and otherwise just in that area, and he looks very dazed and confused. He doesn't know what happened, how he got bloodied up, what is going on. And then the video ends where he's standing in that field on the hood of the car, and he drops a lighter down to set fire to that car that he is standing on. And I think that's key to remember that I didn't point out last time on the show, where he's actually on the car that he just set on fire. That feels very intentional and worth noting. The next key video I want to revisit and talk about again is For Goodbye, which is also translated sometimes to Solitary Goodbye. And this song I want to talk about again, not just because, as I've said before on the show, it is truly one of my personal favorites of his and is just so incredible for me. It's such a cool song, a stress reliever, and just the sound of it is very oddly therapeutic. The way that all of the keyboards just hit just the right notes and everything, it's a masterpiece. Anyway, so the song Goodbye is where the intention that Taemin is showing his dual selves basically is more clear, because there are 3 different settings, which I view as having 3 different Taemins, not just one Taemin character in different settings, but these are 3 of Taemin basically. The opening screen shows this dark sky with dark clouds that are darker where it forms the shape of wings in the clouds. That's worth noting. Then we see one of the Taemins who is on top of this red piano on this area with gray cliffs and rocks and things like that. So there's one Taemin who is on this rocky cliff, gets off the piano, and he's there. You see him bathed in this light of the full moon. There are waterfalls on both sides of him. It's a very majestic setting. The second key scene is where Taemin is wearing all black, and he is in this charred earth area full of fire and cracks in the earth and all of that. And it's worth noting that in one of the Super M videos, he also experienced that environment where this red light would shine down and then suddenly all these cracks would form in the earth. Worth noting. Anyway, the one main environment is where he's surrounded by water. Then there's this environment where he's surrounded by fire. There are also sword fights taking place with all these masked figures in the background. There are scenes where we see a Taemin who is in this coffin and blue flowers are being sent there. One woman gives him flowers and it looks like there are 2 of her. I don't know if it's 2 of her or just her reflection, but from the left and the right she starts walking towards the coffin with the blue flower bouquet. Although these seem like the 2 key scenes, the water versus fire, there is a third scene that I think is super important that gets overlooked. And that is the Taemin who is just in front of this sunny morning sky on this water-soaked ground. Not in the rain, but it's wet ground, so clearly it was raining, and he is just dancing there in front of the sunrise. So we have water Taemin, fire Taemin, and dancing as the sun rises Taemin, the reborn Taemin in a way. Flame of Love is the next key video to discuss, which we didn't really talk about much, if at all, in the last episode, so let's dive into it more. The Flame of Love video starts out with him in this very picturesque scene where he's leaning on the hood of this retro car, his arm around some girl, and he just looks very content. But then, of course, that doesn't last long. As he sits on the ground in this dark room with a lone spotlight on him in the next scene, we see coming from his left side, staring off to the right, is this tall shadow of him, I assume, but it's clearly not his shadow as you would think of it because he's sitting facing forward and the shadow is facing off to the right. But it's there and I think it is his anyway, so it's clearly like another Taemin who is there. There is also in this scene a girl in a red dress who is seen above him, presumably asleep or under a spell or something, but she's levitating in the air above this scene. He doesn't really notice her or he just ignores her, but she's there and it's worth noting. And he starts emitting these sparks with his hand. This is when Taemin's magical powers really first start showing themselves more, and of course in the Goodbye video too, but also in the Flame of Love video. The sparks eventually build up and accumulate into this giant firewall that causes the levitating girl to just disappear from the scene, kind of just like be burned up into ashes. And now Taemin sits alone and turns into red flower petals. So he's still the outline of a human figure, but now he's made of red flowers, and the flames circle him. Suddenly they don't seem like they're in his control anymore. So they were in his control up until the girl left, and then after he got rid of the girl, basically, suddenly it's like his work was done and the flames are no longer his. Until a phoenix shows up, and the phoenix comes and drops these flames that turn into black wings. He basically drops flames over Taemin in a way that triggers black wings to sprout out of him, And so after that happens, Taemin is this winged figure until the black wings also burn away. So easy come, easy go. He has wings and they quickly fall apart. When they do, suddenly the scene changes and now it's got these water walls. Instead of walls of fire, it's walls of water around him. Then the spirit of that girl from before shows up and walks behind him to hug him from behind. And when she reaches him and hugs him, suddenly Taemin walks outside of his body. So the spirit or ghost of him walks out of himself over to that car crash scene with all the smoke coming out and the broken down car and everything, and stands on the hood of the car. Then a third spirit jumps out of that spirit. So now we have the physical Taemin, then we have spirit Taemin who went to the car scene, and then spirit of the spirit Taemin who jumped out of that spirit and then it just stands off to the side dancing by the car. The video screen turns to black after the girl from before suddenly starts walking up to one of the spirit Taemins, one of the ones in a white outfit. And she just starts walking toward him, maybe just to hug him from the front this time, but we don't know because that is the end of the video. Let's talk next about the video for Move, which starts with this sort of take one sound effect, this movie projector click, this sort of an action moment that you would hear on a movie set, which is worth noting. There are also a lot of elements of this that sound like someone is watching Taemin and onto him about something, because there's some aerial footage shown, there's some overall security camera looking footage that is shown. Someone is kind of watching him on TV somewhere. There seemed to be what, again, is a scene where it looks like you could say, okay, that was just Taemin in different settings, but I think it's two of Taemin. So you have the white shirt Taemin and the black shirt Taemin. The white shirt Taemin is walking across a bridge, which was actually one of the bridge settings from one of the Press Your Number performance videos, if I'm not mistaken. The black shirt Taemin walks down this rainy city street at night. There are a lot of glitches in this video as well, maybe from the security camera footage aspect of this, but also just worth noting for later in my theory. There's this one part where Taemin is sitting on this throne and he's surrounded by dancers, and at one point suddenly their faces are no longer visible. They're just these glitching circles that are kind of like what you would do to censor someone's face or hide it during a TV broadcast. They all have that circle around their faces that keeps having this weird static look to them that's glitching in and out like a static TV channel. And similarly, there's a part where Taemin suddenly looks kind of blurry and fades in and out of focus again and again. The video for Thirsty shows a return back to that parking garage setting from earlier in his music video universe with the Ace release and the Danger video, and that's kind of just something I noticed, and it doesn't really add on to my theory. At first it did, but my theory evolved and I decided it probably wasn't actually that symbolic, but it is interesting that they went back to that setting. Maybe you could read into that more. Anyway, the whole thing seems like it was filmed through some sort of circular security camera lens. That's what I took away from the decision to make this video look the way it did. When you see it, you'll know what I mean. It looks like kind of someone was spying on him again, which is worth noting. Last thing to note from that video is that it looks like each flash of light at one point shows a mirrored image of him. So every time you see a flash of light on the screen, suddenly you see this mirrored Taemin where you see one to his left and one to his right. The repackage for the Move album, which included a new single, Day and Night, features Taemin back in this denim outfit, which was reminiscent of the Press Your Number music video outfit, which I found notable. Because remember, the Press Your Number video is a key plot changer, a key area where a lot of the exposition is established for this narrative, and so seems significant, especially because it's called Day and Night. We're talking about different sides of Taemin. We've got day, we've got night here, where there's one Taemin who's in the woods during the day, and there's another one who is on the rocks. I say in the woods during the day because we'll get to the woods at night in a second. So there's one who's walking by the ocean, by these rocks on the ocean, and then there's one scene in the daytime walking through the woods, and this whole thing ends with a sunset scene naturally. Next up to talk about is the video for Under My Skin, which features 3 of Taemin again. Taemin 1 wears all black and is walking around outside during the daytime. Taemin 2 is sitting on this bed in a bedroom that is painted red, and that's at night. So there's one walking around during the day, one sitting at home at night. Taemin 1 at one point sits on top of a piano again, like Taemin 1 in the Goodbye video did. Ian also walks by the ocean at one point. Taemin 1 also walks by these different metal-looking pyramid structures that look a lot like the levitating pyramids from the Super 1 Super M video, just saying. Feels like that was an intentional Easter egg there. Taemin 3 eventually enters the picture, and he's the one who walks in this grassy field and wears all red. Recap, Taemin 1 is wearing all black, walking around outside. Taemin 2 is just in this red room at night, and Taemin 3 wears all red and is walking through grass. Taemin 3 approaches this full-length mirror and basically stares at himself in it. He also sees different square mirrors strewn across this grassy field, so his reflection is everywhere here. And the last detail to note here is that these blue sparks go from left to right. So Taemin is still in control of emitting sparks from his arms, basically, but when he does now, they are blue, as opposed to your traditional flame color. In the music video timeline now, we are up to February of 2019 with Want. And in the Want video, we start with seeing Taemin in this all-black outfit again, with a target symbol to his left and his right, which looked a lot like the target symbols that are part of Super M's music video world, another Easter egg I'd like to point out. Anyway, masks are a key thing that Taemin wears in this video. He goes from wearing a mask that's made of this black netting to wearing one that is all gold and sparkly, and in an earlier video he wore another sparkly one that was silver, so it just feels like an interesting progression from silver to gold. It is also the same mask that I believe Taeyeon wore during their Super M tour, but we already talked about that. There is a snake that starts wrapping itself around Taemin in one scene where he's wearing all red. And there's also another white shirt Taemin. So his main outfits, yet again, we have a Taemin in black, a Taemin in white, and a Taemin in red. And the red one has the snake wrapped around his arm. Other key images, we do have a Taemin wearing blue as well, who is in a room with blue curtains and a blue line running through it. And the main thing there to remember is just that there is blue. Then we go back to the wood setting again. Remember, I told you to remember that, but this time it's full of fog and it's dark out and very eerie. Taemin dances there alone, and then this girl comes back there and dances alone. We see the red flower petals are back flying through the air. We see the rain and that wet ground again. Two more key things to keep in mind. One is that there are black cables that all fall to the floor at one point that look like those microphone cords from a previous video. And now these black cables, when they hit the floor, they suddenly turn into looking like they're snakes slithering around. They went from being his microphones to turning into snakes. There's this dance sequence where Taemin and the other dancers are in front of this set of doors, really, really towering, larger-than-life white doors with these elaborate engravings all over them. These doors just sort of showed up. Just out of the blue, popped up this elaborate door to something. We are now up to talking about a video that came out July 26th of 2019 for Famous. And Famous, the video starts with Taemin literally having his hands tied again. We see apples strewn across the ground that are half eaten. I think with the snake and the apples by now, especially if you're very into K-pop symbols for other artists too, you know by now that those are representing temptation and evil here. In the Famous video, this smoky car crash scene is back. We also see the cracked mirror, so now when he looks at himself, it's a cracked mirror as opposed to before when it wasn't. We see this one scene where there is another Taemin within Taemin kind of scene, where one Taemin is seen in front of this red wall. At the same time, a Taemin is seen in this picture frame or window of sorts behind him, holding up a lit match, basically. So we see a Taemin facing a flame in front of a zoomed-out Taemin who is outside of that picture frame. Key symbol here are the color of the sheets. As you gathered by this point, there's a lot of color red symbolism here. And the video starts where Taemin dances in front of white sheets, but later on in the video, they are red sheets. Lastly, he looks at his reflection in the water at points, and when he does see his reflection in the water for the first time, then in the next scene, automatically, Taemin is now bloodied. So we don't see what happened, but we see that after he saw himself, now he is in pain. We are now up to talking about Never Gonna Dance Again Act 1, which came out earlier this year. And one of the singles from that was Two Kids, which the main detail we haven't talked about yet that you need to know is that in that video there is a scene where suddenly Taemin is seen levitating for a brief second. So he goes from just sitting somberly on this curb of this city street to suddenly he is he falls backwards, and then suddenly the next scene we see him and he is levitated above the crowd walking below him. We have to talk about Criminal, which starts off with the scene where Taemin is being led away somewhere by security guards on all sides, reminiscent of EXO's Monster video, another Easter egg for the SM entertainment world, as well as the mini TVs we see in the corner. There are 4 key settings in this video to pay attention to, mostly for Easter eggs that point to other SM Entertainment artists' videos, but also because they further Taemin's storyline as well. One is that cluttered vintage store scene where Taemin's essentially in this glass box, which serves as a gift shop of sorts. It's full of greenery and life, but also clearly a lot of pain because Taemin is there with a chainsaw at one point, with a knife at one point, showing off this bloody face and stuff, so it's really an interesting contrast because he is the one who holds the weapons and looks like the villain, but he also looks like the victim because he's the one that keeps getting beaten up while he's in that scene. At one point, Taemin struggles to get this plastic off from his head because now the mask that covers his face is just plastic, and he tries to get it off, and these black birds fly down to watch him struggle, basically. Second big scene is him in this room where a lot of sparks, literal sparks, are flying everywhere, and there are dancers in red outfits performing around him. Third scene is the pulling away by the guards, and the fourth key scene is the white room he's in, which has these walls lined with speakers, very reminiscent of NCT's Black on Black video. This is the first time we see Taemin with a yellow rose. There's been a lot of blue rose symbolism throughout his universe and a white rose at the very beginning, but now it's yellow, just like the color of the one 10 holds in Super M's world. Lastly, there are a lot of references here to hands outstretched to someone, hoping for help maybe, being greedy maybe, you can interpret those how you want, but we have hands that hold up playing cards at one point, one hand being human and one hand being a skeleton hand, and it's unclear if that's supposed to be Taemin's hand too or what, but there is that scene, and the playing card close-up seems significant because that is a key symbol for EXO videos like Love Shot and Lotto as well. And hands are also reaching out toward Taemin in one scene as he sees that the walls around him are mesh. The walls around him turn into these flexible things that hands can kind of stick through, and suddenly the wall is, it's not necessarily permeable, but the fabric is stretchy, basically. And so these flexible materials that the walls are made out of are what hands are trying to reach Taemin through. And he kind of ignores them, but they don't give up, trying to get his attention there. We are now up in the timeline to talking about this brand new album, Never Gonna Dance Again Act 2. The teaser images already started showing off Easter eggs and symbols worth paying attention to. First of all, Taemin is seen at one scene in the teaser picture of, it's him in a glass box. So remember, that is a key symbol here because he was in that glass box room of sorts in the Criminal video from Act 1. Also, a glass box and being trapped in one is a symbol for EXO members in other parts of the SM entertainment world. He also wears a white turtleneck in one teaser image. And I told you to remember that because way back at the beginning of this whole story, when he performed Ace, his trailer for his debut EP, he wore a white turtleneck too. So a very cool connection way back to where his solo career all started and where the story began. Third thing here is that there is this black veil covering his face at another point. In past points of Taemin videos, a key accessory has been a mask that covers his full face, and that continues, but now it is a veil and a black crown as well. We have another close-up again, like in that previous video, of a Taemin face close-up with green lighting on it as he tries to make a phone call. Remember, previously we saw a Taemin facing one direction with his face lit up red, and another Taemin face facing the other way with his face lit up green, both trying to make calls. Now we just have a green-lit Taemin face, but then we do see two Taemins again, both holding a phone. But they're both trying to make a call again, a nod to a previous video. There's one scene in this video for Idea where he's in this all-white dining room of sorts, and everyone who is dining there has this red paint, very reminiscent of the paint from the BTS No music video from their early days. There's one setting where Taemin is back in that woods again, which is notable. There are flame symbols back, a lot of old symbols come back, and then we see Taemin wearing light blue. And mostly here he's worn white, black, and red. Now he has this light blue that he wears as he walks up the staircase to the clouds. A staircase that just goes up into the bright blue skies, and he crouches near the top, of the staircase to heaven, essentially. That stairway to heaven concept will make a lot more sense in a few minutes. The final moments of this video feature the sound of a car engine revving up. Maybe that getaway car that's been in this story the whole time? The final lyrics are "Finally I opened my eyes." And that is where the story ends for now. Let's break down what all of these symbols mean and refresh your memory about what all of them are, by also keeping in mind what has been going on for Taemin's character in the Super M music video universe. In that universe, Taemin showed he is kind of this evil mastermind, the one controlling things, the one whose hands are reaching out to stop people, literally. He has levitating powers, he lifts up a car in the Super M teaser, he controls the movie projectors when they start and stop, so he is really controlling whether this is a movie or this is a dream within a dream. We talked about all of that in the House of Cards episode. He is basically the one with the most in charge of that. We also see in Super M teasers levitation, the room surrounded by microphones, the images of targets. A lot of the symbols come back. And with NCT, there is a lot of that as well, where we see this zooming into a phone screen, or seeing that this is, again, like maybe a dream within a dream, or different levels of reality here. We have tech glitch scenes, we have picture frame symbols. A lot of that comes from NCT's world, which is about this dreaming within a dream, or just questioning reality, is ultimately what it all comes down to. In the first Taemin dedicated episode of the show, I told you all to keep an eye out for these key symbols, and sure enough, all of them are making a comeback. Taemin facing himself and mirror imagery, reflections of himself in different sides of himself, or maybe alter egos, blue flowers, the car crash scene, flames, the camera roll images and other "this is just a movie" concept elements, and control of the elements, water, earth, fire, etc. And all of that continues to be relevant here. First of all, the car scene, we continue to see that car crash scene or time where Taemin is literally in the driver's seat of a vehicle, and then this final video ends with the engine revving up of a car, as if he's using that getaway car once again. There's the woods scene that is key, where in the day and night video he was walking around during the day in the woods, and in the Want video he was walking around the woods at night, and then in this new Idea video he is back in the woods. We have the speaker-lined room back, which was from his early days with the Danger video, and back for Criminal. For Danger and Criminal, that feels like an intentional repeat scene. We see the glass box imagery again, that was part of Act 1 and Act 2 of the story. We see the microphones that were hanging from the ceiling in Ace suddenly fall to the floor in Want. We see the piano where one Taemin was lying duct taped under as a victim, and then later on, we see a Taemin who lies on top of a red one, and then in the Under My Skin video, Taemin sits atop a black piano. We continue to see these different color schemes play out, especially with outfit symbolism, where Taemin wears a nod to a previous release that is symbolic. For example, the denim outfits that were the same for Day and Night and Press Your Number, both key plot points for the story, and the white turtleneck that was from his early days back with the new video for Idea and the concept images. We see the color scheme playing out, especially with the color red at points, whether it's a red lit scene or a red room he sits in, or the girl levitating in a red dress. Red is a key symbol here. We also see different color contrasts that tell the story, whether it's the smoke color that emits from the car, depending on what point of the story we're in, or the color of Taemin's clothes, or the color of light reflected on his face, but those contrasts continue to be drawn. We also have movie references back because we had that little TV screen in the corner of the Act 1 video. We see those security camera footage type moments throughout his universe. We see the levitating comeback for Act 1 that was in the Flame of Love video as well, and other magical powers of sorts at play here. In the earlier videos, there was Press Your Number and Move and Want and Famous that feature scenes that are on wet ground, or he's dancing just in the rain. There's a rainy day scene. And those rainy scenes obviously have more to do with water than fire. But now it seems like with Two Kids, Criminal, and Idea, the latest, most recent 3 singles Taemin has released, they've all emphasized fire. And so that I found an interesting transition from the water theme videos mixed with fire to now being mostly just about fire, about that angst that his character has maybe had been building up within him. I also went super extra and possibly overboard in trying to figure out the symbolism in one key detail about where Taemin ends his videos, what direction he faces. So stay with me here. He ends 3 key videos facing front and center right at the camera. The Flame of Love video, the Famous video, and the Idea video. So his idea of what fame is and what love is, I mean, there could be a connection there where Idea kind of sums up the story. Famous is the idea he's thinking about, and love is also a theme he's thinking about. I don't know, it feels like if you're standing front and center at the end of the video, and you're also talking about the centralizing themes of your work, it feels like there could be an indication of some sort of reference there. I also noticed that he ends a lot more of his videos facing to the right than facing to the left. So it could just be he thinks that's his good side, but it could also have deeper meaning, because the 2 main videos where I noticed he looks off to the left are Ace and 2 Kids. Both intros of sorts, because remember, 2 Kids came out before Act 1, the album. It was kind of like a teaser for the album. And the Ace trailer video was like a teaser for the actual EP, whose single wasn't Ace. The main single was Danger from that. So our teasers reveal him looking off to the left, but then when the action starts, and he starts, engaging with alter egos and acting out some more evil sides of him, more rebellion, he looks off to the right. So maybe that's like a different one of the Taemins who happens to always look off to the right, and then a different Taemin, because we're looking at 3 main Taemins in this story, remember, so just something to think about. Many other themes continue to show up. We have the roses that go from white to red to blue to yellow. Red flower petals show up. We have the glitching scenes where Taemin's kind of in and out of focus. We have the wings, the dark black wings that he wears at points. And then eventually, now in Act 1, we saw the birds fly over to him to watch him struggle. So Taemin went from having wings and the phoenix swooping down to give him wings, to now all these black birds are just making fun of him essentially, or just refusing to help. So maybe he didn't show enough gratitude for their help earlier, maybe he didn't see the sign or interpret it right enough, and that's what his lesson is from that. What's key to know about the phoenix and the flame imagery that keeps being leaned into a lot during Act 1 and Act 2 for Taemin is that Taemin did confirm, the most that he has confirmed is that, first of all, this concept is meant to show a new side of himself, rising from the ashes. That's the exact phrase used. He's rising from the ashes in Act 2 and forming this new self. Second key thing that has been confirmed about the new album and its meaning is that it relies on and has been inspired by Plato's theory of ideas. What that means and how it helps us make sense of all of these different symbols and color schemes and all of that, the ultimate interpretations and summaries you can make by using Plato's theory of ideas will be what I break down after the break. My podcast recommendation of the week goes to Small Doses with Amanda Seales. This podcast comes from one of your new favorite truth tellers and comedians, dropping gems every week with a weekly podcast that brings you potent truths for everyday use, covering everything from the side effects of inspiration to the side effects of community, the side effects of free speech, the side effects of toxic relationships, all sorts of societal ills, and what your side effects are depending on how you treat them. For all sorts of pop culture critiques and overall social commentary, I find it to be a really interesting podcast that I highly recommend. Here is a super brief and simplified overview of Plato's theory of ideas. Plato proposed that all things exist within the constraints of the space and time, whereas ideas transcend space and time and therefore are viewed as more perfect, viewed as something that is just universally defined and able to be transferred, transcending past space and time. Basically, he really drew a line between the physical world and the world of ideas. He viewed that as an entirely separate thing, philosophically speaking. Plato argued that things change into other things over time, but ideas do not change into other ideas at their core. So, for example, let's take a super abstract idea like love. Love is an idea, and over time maybe our definition of it, our perspective on it has changed, our applications of the concept, all of that can change, but those are things. Our applications of it are to things. Our redefinition of it is in response to things in the physical world. But love is still the word love, and at its core, that is still an idea that transcended all of the recharacterizations of that concept. So Plato basically viewed ideas as existing apart from the physical world in this superior realm of possibility. He called this the heaven of ideas. Yeah, the word heaven, I'm sure, was intentional for Taemin to use for one of his songs because of this. The heaven of ideas is basically referring to this whole other world of ideas to talk about. He wanted to talk about that totally separate from conversations about things in our current space and time. One could argue here that this is where Carl Jung's theories about discovering the self and the different sides of the self and putting all of those selves back together to understand who you are at your core. This is where that theory that we talked about before could intersect with Plato's theories about the heaven of ideas, because the heaven of ideas basically consists of ideas that are only activated in meaning when humans do that actualization. So they have to act on the ideas. But how does that still go along with the thought that ideas are perfect in living in this other philosophical world? Well, the ideas can exist without humans, but humans cannot exist without the ideas. The ideas form the foundation of who we are. And so ultimately, Taemin here, by relying on Plato's theory of ideas, is exploring the concept of finding who we are, just in a different way compared to artists like BTS, who focused more on Carl Jung's views of how to discover who you are through multiple selves, or in this case, philosophically at least, we're focused more on the concept of a self in the first place. Plato viewed things as falling into different classes, and these categorizations of things would be impossible without the foundational idea that started creating those classes. So let's go back to the love example. There are different stages in a relationship, right? Maybe you're acquaintances, then you're friends, and then maybe you're romantic partners, maybe you become a married couple. Those are classes. Those are viewed as socially constructed ideas of what your love for that person looks like. If it's platonic, that's a classification. If it's romantic, that's a different classification. But the idea is still love. Love is still the foundation, and without love, none of those classifications of the type of love would be possible. So that's that's why Plato really likes to elaborate on the world of ideas as opposed to our physical world, because our physical world is always changing, but ideas are always there. Plato's views are also pluralistic, which is just a fancy realm of philosophy term for viewing ideas as being able to show both unity and plurality. There can be many humans, for example, but humanness is still just one idea. Just like there can be many forms of love, but love itself is still the same idea. That's unity in plurality, which is what Taemin seems to be exploring here, where there can be many Taemins, but Taeminness, or what truly makes you Taemin at your core, would be still just one idea here. That you don't have to feel like you are constricted and put into a box, and there are different sides of you that are mutually exclusive from each other. The idea of Taemin can still be consistent. You can still mutually have existing within you several Taemins, because at their core they are all the same concept still. Plato even went so far as to contribute to philosophers' original understandings really about the concept of rationalism in the first place, because Plato would go so far as to say that ideas were needed to be the foundation of that whole train of thought with rationalism, where we need ideas, otherwise we have no foundation to learn anything. Essentially, we cannot know anything about our world and make sense of it without ideas. So that's why, although he liked to clarify and emphasize how distinct the world of ideas is from the physical world, he did also want to stress that both need to be paid attention to. It's not like, well, the world of ideas is more important, so let's ignore the physical world. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying that we acknowledge where the line is drawn, and then we find ways to engage both worlds together. Because to learn anything and to define anything, we have to engage with that other realm of ideas. So for Taemin to be finding his true self in his story, he has to grapple with concepts of what is love, what is self-love, what is a relationship, what is freedom, what is being a free spirit, all of those things that his character tries to learn about. There are two main concepts Plato uses to break down what he means by the world of ideas versus the other world. One of those concepts is relations of appearances versus reality, and the second one is participation. So again, it's that element of understanding the appearance, what things seem to be versus what they actually are in reality. And the second thing is participation, how we have to actually engage with those ideas in order for their meanings to truly exist. Love would not exist if we did not carry out different forms of love, for example. Those ideas only exist as long as we interact with those ideas. One of the clearest connections to Taemin's music videos that I could find is that these two concepts, the reality versus appearance of things and the concept of participation, those two things together, the closest, most direct connection I can find to Taemin's work would have to be the fact that Plato wrote about these things a lot in a book called Republic. And in this book, he basically uses shadows as the ultimate example. Yes, shadows, which are a big part of Taemin's storyline. Remember the scene where in one of the videos his shadow is staring at him from a different angle, so it looks like it's someone else's shadow approaching him, but it's still his shadow tilted. And similarly, he has a song called Shadow. He references shadows a lot in his work. So shadows in the book Republic, that concept is used as an ultimate example of how reality is more subjective than you think. Because a shadow to a person is very real. If you are facing a shadow, you see a shadow and you think you're just calling it what it is. But actually a shadow is technically just the sunlight's reflection. A shadow itself is not really anything. It's just another term for a sunlight's reflection. And so that is just the ultimate example of how what feels very real to you may not actually be what it appears to be. So Taemin, in his story, is really trying to figure that out, where everything he sees, like the images of that girl levitating and things like that, are very real to him, and he feels like they are real. But something is kind of nagging at him, reminding him that technically the things are not what they appear to be always. And this world is just, therefore, like a shadow of ideas world. So we've got two different worlds we're talking about, with the heaven of ideas, and then the shadow of ideas is kind of a sub-concept to think about things that look a little deceptive. There is a lot more to Plato's work, of course, but that is a super simplified version of what he was getting at, and enough information to hopefully understand where Taemin is coming from with using that theory of ideas as his inspiration for this new album. Plato did actually issue a lot of self-critiques of his own arguments, and other philosophers have over time as well contradicted some of his claims, but at their core, the idea that ideas are different than physical things is the ultimate takeaway that still rings true, especially for what Taemin is doing, where he is engaging with those ideas of what is his truth. Let's unpack now different lyrics from different songs off of this brand new album. First of all, there is the song Identity that it ends the album, but I want to talk about it first because it kind of sums up what his whole album was getting to at the end, which was who he really is. And there's a special lyric in there that's kind of a nod to previous releases from him and other members of SHINee, their whole concept of albums that rhyme with the ace sound, basically. And he includes this bass to ace lyric, which feels like it is a little nod to how far in his journey he's gone, just his musical character from bass to ace, basically. More on that in a little while. Be Your Enemy is his collaboration with Wendy from Red Velvet, which is really quite a beautiful song, and the way their voices mix, it's really interesting because Wendy does have this sound that is kind of spirit-like he is talking to a spirit or a ghost of someone. I mean, as a compliment. It's very cool how they create this immensely emotional, impactful vibe with just their voices. So anyway, the song Be Your Enemy talks about lonely days alone, days of great distress, completely inside your room, super relevant lyrics to 2020, and talking about I'll be your enemy, basically, but I'll comfort you. So the whole intent of this song seems to be to contradict itself intentionally, where you're saying that you're going to be there to comfort someone, but you're also saying at the same time that you'll be their enemy, which sounds like it's just totally ironic, and that's kind of the point. It's wanting to comfort someone while also knowing you shouldn't be with them at all, and that that's not actually the best thing for them. So in this story context, it's really about Taemin and the spirit of this girl that is in his music videos that keeps coming up, who he kind of knows he shouldn't be with any longer, but also wants her comfort and vice versa. Impressionable is a song with some key lyrics, of course, about being easily impressed upon, but also there is this key lyric, the fantasy you've been drawing is in your arms, which I view as another way of talking about how it's actually less real than he thought. What he viewed as so real and his reality of being with this lifelong lover, someone he should be with for the rest of his life, was actually not the way he should have seen it, and things were not as they appeared, and that this was just a fantasy he was concocting. The fantasy you've been drawing is in your arms. He's kind of trying to cast blame on himself or maybe the other person, but ultimately just to say that this relationship isn't good for them and they are too impressionable on each other. Some of the many relevant lyrics to what I'm talking about from the song Idea: small projection made by reason, you grow on instinct, deep dreams with the night in one's arms, deepening shadow, perception is beyond the limits, your shadow that you finally found, everything you can't see, the moment that made me believe, throw me beyond that, the blue light when you and I face each other, absolute value, my idea, a dangerous dream that swallowed me, all sorts of other lyrics about references to shadows and someone from his dreams, basically a product of his mind, something that was just, in the terms of Plato, existing in the shadow of ideas, and he's finally realizing that it was not existing in his world, it was existing in the shadow of ideas, not even the heaven of ideas, but this other version that was not so good. The blue light I also think is key that he references because of the color schemes and the symbolism there throughout his music video world. And most important to keep in mind is that the song's final lyrics are, the night that you were cut out of my life, I finally opened my eyes, which really sums it all up. It's like a bad dream. He realized what he had thought was kind of like the shadow theory, when he thought he was seeing someone from his ultimate dream, from this perfect dream. He then realized it was actually just a dressed up nightmare, a version of a nightmare or something that was bad for me. And so he opens his eyes literally, and that dream has come to an end because he realized it wasn't actually suiting him. The final lyrics in the chorus of Two Kids from Act 1, the first album in this part of Taemin's music video series, basically saying that saying the words I love you was a mistake. We were two kids, too young and dumb to really know what love was. Again, that theory of you think you understand a concept, but you actually were acting out that concept wrong. It wasn't what you thought it was kind of just existing in the shadow of ideas, masquerading as something it was not. It was not really love. And then the final lyric is, we will have to live through the time and be forgotten, you and I. Trying to, again, deal with that concept and the idea of what the phrase you and I even means to him anymore and what it should mean or should not mean. Some really poetic and important for my theory's sake lyrics from one of the Act 1 releases, Nemo. This song is naturally about finding someone or trying to find them or realizing that you didn't find them when you thought you did. Probably our ending would not be like this. If you see what I can see, is it the same for you? Will walking on this road feel empty like me? I wonder if it's just me. The warmth where you sit, why aren't you with me? Even after time has passed, it's still the same. I will wait at this place for you. Everything burnt out. My sharp words, the memories left in the square drawer, the right place I came for the first time, where I'm standing in your memory. I'm running in circles, I can't say anything. I only look at your photos feeling belated regret. You were everything of my days. The sorrows that accumulated all night overwhelm me. Your traces that make me more wretched. You were mine. Wish you were mine. Why aren't you with me? In this song, he's saying things as if this person he's seeking is right there, while also saying, where are you? Again, referring to and trying to understand how to define and how to categorize this love he was experiencing, and if it really was love or if it just existed in that shadow of ideas. Some key lyrics from the song Think of You. Everything's annoying, little things bother me, I'm losing my self-esteem, people tell me it's time to stop, it's time to just tire of this. full of greed even though I'm immature. Can I cry, give me a hug? And those are repeated lyrics throughout the song. Can I cry, give me a hug? Things like that. Too tired, too sick of this, all of that. So he's really looking for someone to comfort him at this time, but at the same time, he's not getting it received. His offers are not being acknowledged. His desire to have someone comfort him is suddenly ignored, and so now he starts wondering basically where he went wrong, and again, where he probably went wrong in defining this as love when it wasn't. I could go on, but the point is that Taemin is really struggling to figure out how much of his past love he wants to relive or live through again, can keep it going, whereas how much he wants to just leave in that drawer that he describes of his notes and photos and other memories. How much he wants to leave in his past and how much he thinks should be back in the heaven of ideas where it will be an eternal love that always exists for him. If you remember any symbolism from Taemin's music video universe, the one that I really hope you do remember above all else are symbols of a mirror and Taemin's reflection of himself, multiple Taemins. Remember, there are three main ones that I see here. In the Press Your Number video, we had him as both the victim and the victor, and he was also seen in both red light and green light at the same time, different Taemins looking off in different directions. In the Goodbye video, we see a woman, or maybe a reflection of a woman at the same time, walking towards him with the blue flowers. In Flame of Love, we see a Russian nesting doll situation of sorts where spirits keep jumping out of other spirits to relive old and past memories. In Thirsty, we see a mirror image of him reflected as the lights flash. In Under My Skin, we see three Taemins, each in a different setting, one in the grassy field by the mirrors, one in that room, and one walking around outside. In the video for Famous, we see him staring at a cracked mirror, and then the Taemin within Taemin, one in a picture frame and one beyond that, zoomed out. We also see him facing his reflection in water there. In the Criminal video, again, he's the victim and the victor. And in the Idea video, we see two Taemins again, both holding up a phone, looking off in different directions. We also see him facing a little silver robot dude for 1 second, so we will probably revisit that later on because that wasn't really explained and I don't have much else to add to that yet, but it has to do, I think, with the NCT Superhuman video, so go rewatch that if you want to try to gather more context out of that. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Ultimately, keeping in mind how different Taemins are doing different things at once and what all this means for the story, I came up with 5 main theories and one that is ultimately, in my opinion, the right one. So here are my thoughts. Again, these are just my theories. Theory 1 I had is that this is just, again, Taemin adding on to the dream within a dream within a dream concept that NCT has gone with, that I've talked about a lot on their specific episodes of the show. Theory 2 is that his whole storyline is basically all about him controlling the elements. He is the ultimate an ultimate evil genius and a hero. He's a villain and a hero in this superhero story where he has these superhuman abilities to control fire, earth, water, and air, which he's done all of those in his videos, from shooting flames out of his hands to causing walls of water to rise around him to levitating in the air, all of that. My third theory is that Taemin's alter ego he has to get a hold of. And his alter ego is the one who keeps committing crimes. Remember, in the Press Your Number video, Taemin looked very confused. He couldn't remember what happened. He couldn't remember committing the crime. It must have been someone else. He has no memory of doing that. But Taemin is ultimately on this journey to try to track down this evil person, and at the end of the day, he realizes he's been that evil person the whole time. If you watch SpongeBob as a kid, it's the, oh my gosh, I'm the maniac moment of the story. Fourth theory is that Taemin is basically trying to reckon with the whole time the fact that he has this alter ego in him. So kind of going off the third theory of he's trying to track down this evil person and then finds out it's him. My fourth theory was that he knows it's him and he's trying to figure out what to do about that side of him that keeps popping up. Kind of like Voldemort living in the back of your head from the first Harry Potter movie situation. My fifth theory takes elements out of those 4 theories and combines them in a way that I think makes the most sense. But also do keep in mind these theories are not mutually exclusive. They probably the true intention of the videos was a mix of these thoughts. But of course, it's just really fun and intentional for fans to get to create their own meanings from the symbols and messages that he presents to us. So that's what I've done, and here is my main big theory. This is different from my dream within a dream theory. It sounds a little similar, but I try to distinguish it. This whole thing Taemin is dealing with is all in his head. It's all in his head. This girl that he sees hugging him at one point, levitating at one point, she is a figment of his imagination. His whole criminal doing is a figment of his imagination. He is living through very vivid scenarios that feel very real to him, but it is all in his head. It goes along with Plato's theory of ideas, where you are totally misled into thinking that a lot of things that are actually arbitrary or actually just socially constructed, you think of those as such concrete realities, and Taemin keeps learning, he keeps unlearning essentially what he thought he could take for truth and for reality. He is piece by piece undoing what he thought of as a concrete foundation of how he lived his life, and he's rebuilding after unlearning. So I think Taemin's character is on this journey with the viewers, intended to be decoding Easter eggs with us. He is basically breaking the fourth wall in a way by basically going along with us, and he knows that the intent of the videos, his character in the videos is aware that people are with him on a journey, not necessarily viewers. It's not like he's breaking the fourth wall saying, I know I'm in a music video, but just breaking the fourth wall in the sense that he's aware of the plot being put forth and what the mission is. It's that he, along with whoever is watching on, whoever's looking onwards, to help him unpack what he has been hiding from himself and what has been shielded as a shadow when it's not actually a shadow. So he is undoing and decoding things with the audience. It's ultimately a symbol of the journey into his self-awareness and his inner psyche in addressing all these issues in his psyche that he has not known how to unmask previously. So ultimately, his guesses are as good as ours for defining and understanding his reality. And ultimately, the theme of and the message in Plato's theory of ideas and Taemin's music video world is that people are looking to define reality in the wrong places. The truly eternal place to find and define reality rests on your ideas. And the ideas are your source of a great life or a life that is being led astray. So to understand your material reality, you need to stop and understand the basis of your knowledge that comes from ideas. And so Taemin now is releasing a song called Idea where he realizes that. And so this is a major full circle moment for him where he's back in an old outfit and stuff, making all these nods to his previous releases in this accumulating moment where all of this past knowledge that he has realized about himself along this journey with us is now coming to be more apparent. He's now, and that's why the song ends with the lyrics about him finally opening his eyes, because now he finally sees what's truly real and what was just part of the existing in the shadow of ideas. That's also why I think we see him now walking toward literally a stairway to heaven, because he has this song called Heaven now, and now he is acknowledging, and now he's aware of the heaven of ideas and that whole realm of possibility. So where the story goes going forward, again, is anyone's guess. He probably still revisits old themes that he still needs to unpack. It's kind of a lifetime of work, self-awareness. It doesn't have a concrete endpoint, so I'm sure there's much more to the story. He probably does more literally directly face the other Taemins, who are all kind of a figment of his imagination, these different aspects of himself, these alter egos. And so I think we'll see a lot more of that. Maybe him literally more physically fighting his alter egos. So we will see about that. But I do think a lot of this is all in his head. Now, if this means that for the SM Entertainment artists whose music videos I see as totally connected, does this mean that all of those SM Entertainment artists' videos are all in Taemin's head too? Not necessarily. I still have to think about that. But this is just my proposition. So we'll see where the story goes going forward, and definitely have to talk about that little silver robot guy going forward as well, because that went unanswered. But that is always the case with Taemin's music video world, is just there's so much room for future exploration of ideas. Taemin continues to be just entirely 100% accurate by summing up his music as a unique style of catharsis, because it's not your traditional expected view of a cathartic song to listen to. It's not like it's a lullaby. It sounds kind of, actually, this new album sounds a bit like a horror film soundtrack, in a good way though. And that's what he does, a unique style of catharsis. He does create so much work that is introspective and leaves you in a lot of thought, which can be therapeutic, while at the same time it is a unique thing. It's not for everyone, and it's a very personalized listening experience you get, and in a very unique train of thought you'll suddenly go down in your mind as you listen to Taemin music, which is just such a unique gift to provoke all this thought in listeners in this way. So kudos to Taemin for that, and thank you, Taemin, for always creating such incredible works of art to listen to. Always on repeat for me. Really enjoy this new album. It's just really incredible. The storytelling ability you have, the cinematic videos you create. Very excited for what's in store for the future, and hopefully there is an Act 3 or an epilogue teaser video or something that comes out soon. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe because in the future I will surely readdress this universe again, adding and updating my theories about it in the future, as well as my theories overall about SM entertainment artists and more K-pop artists. Lots more music video dissection in future releases, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you later this week.